The Yoga of Awakening is broken up into 3 sections, and it really reflects my own journey. When I first started practicing yoga back in 1987, it was just very physical for me. I felt good when the practice was over. I wasn't interested in the spiritual aspect. I don't even know if I really even took it in. I loved to move, I loved to breathe, and I knew that at the end of the practice I felt better. My body felt better, and I didn't want to then contribute to not feeling well, so my diet changed. I quit smoking cigarettes, I quit drinking, quit eating meat, got rid of processed foods. It just seemed to happen very organically, but it was very body-based. And I would look around the room sometimes and I'd see people having these big emotional experiences in class, and I never really understood it. I actually thought it was incredibly indulgent, and I thought all you did was just move and breathe and practice. Seemed valid enough. And I probably practiced that way very intensely. I practiced 5 hours a day, would hold poses for a long time, and would push through the musculature, the tension. But again, with only the intention to get stronger and more flexible. And then one day, I was in a yoga class, and we were holding a stretch for a very long period of time after we had done all this asana. And the teacher was going on and on about something. I wasn't even paying attention. But suddenly, this rush of energy moved through my body. And I remember doing that. I thought, oh, what's that? And then again, I thought, oh my God, I'm gonna cry. And I got really kind of panicked because there was nothing wrong. There was nothing in my life in that immediate moment that would create space for such a big emotion to come up and through me. And I actually had to leave the room, and I went to the bathroom, and I just started to cry and cry and cry, and my body started to shake. And I realized now I was discharging all this energy. And I felt amazing, but kind of freaked out. And I went back into the room, got into the stretch on the other side, and heard the teacher in a completely different way. Suddenly, the teacher, I felt like he was talking to my soul. I felt like he was reading my mind. I felt like everything that he was articulating, everything that had just kind of come up for me, all this emotion, all these feelings. And as he talked about love and truth and forgiveness and acceptance, I felt overwhelmed with gratitude and freedom. And that was a real turning point for my practice, because I realized that the first 5 years of my practice were physical, were mental, and that what was about to shift was moving me into a place that was about the emotions and energy. The two were connected. It took me 5 years of pushing through some really intense tension for the tension to finally release, and for me to be available to information that was being presented every single day. The teacher didn't change, I changed, and what changed was that my energy expanded, and I heard not from my head, but from my heart. So from that point, I started to explore the mind-body connection, where trauma lives in the body, how we absorb information, process it, and the impact that it has on our energy field, and started working very specifically with the chakras. The chakras are vortices of electromagnetic energy that line the length of the spine. Now, there are thousands of chakras all over the body, and if you've ever had acupuncture done and they pierce the meridian, it opens and releases that energy, creates spaciousness and freedom. It's the same with the major chakras that we work with. The chakras spin at a very specific rate. And when they're balanced, it impacts our health, our wellness, our thought process, the ways in which we communicate, create, our sexuality. When they're out of balance because of the information we take in, so trauma and experience. When that information comes into our body and it hits a chakra, it renders it either excessive in its energy, too fast, or deficient in its energy, too slow. Why this is so interesting is because each chakra has an influence over a particular part of the body. So if that chakra is spinning too fast or too slow, excessive or deficient, blocks the body's ability to receive prana that area becomes vulnerable to tension, to illness, to disease. So I started to look at the asana practice, those poses, and seeing a direct correlation. Well, if I'm stretching this particular muscle and it's related to this particular chakra, then when emotions start to come up, maybe instead of getting uncomfortable and rigid and afraid, I have some clues about what might my body be holding on to emotionally, what information might be underneath the musculature that can change my life. And so for about 5 years, I went into a very deep inquiry about the mind-body connection and looking at my own life path, my own experiences, and seeing how it's impacted and influenced my ability to love, my intuition, my empowerment. And in this process of understanding what my body was holding on to, allowing myself to see that bigger picture spiritually of why things happen as they have, healing, forgiving, the third aspect opened up for me, which was the symbolic, the psychic realm, which was, how do we move from the individual to the collective, from the me to the we? So for years, my practice was about my body, my emotions. And when it shifted, it became not so much how yoga can change me, but how can I, through this practice, begin to change and maybe perhaps enhance the world. So the third realm, the psychic symbolic, is recognizing your body as prayer, is knowing that we're these conduits of energy, that as much love as we're capable of pulling in, we have that same capacity to express out. That in the same way how my thoughts affect my health and wellness, my thoughts and my intentions also affect other people. So if I want to contribute to the healing of this planet, then I have to be willing to communicate, to insert myself in a way that's loving, compassionate, mindful. So the third realm became yoga's prayer. The way that you place your hands, the way that you place your feet, the way that you come in and out of a pose becomes an expression of your devotion. So when I get on a mat and I put my palms together, whatever the prayer might be, maybe I'm directing it to a lover, a friend, someone who needs some healing, a global circumstance, an environmental circumstance. It doesn't matter if my practice is 15 minutes or 2 hours. It's about the attitude, not the application. I know I'm going to get stronger and more flexible. I know that I'm going to purify my body. I know that the practice is going to allow me to de-stress. I know that the practice is going to give me space for emotional reconciliation. That's a byproduct. But what the practice can also do is allow me to serve mankind by opening my heart to the global heartbeat and contributing in a way that adds to peace, to happiness, to joy, to love. The three programs move us from the practical to the fantastic, from the mundane to the mystical, recognizing that they both work together in relationship because there is no separation. It took me a long time in my own practice to realize this integration. My physical practice was over here. Eventually, my spiritual practice was over here, and then they came together when I recognized that this practice is mystical, meaning that at any given moment, we're having a direct experience with God. Now, I define God as that which exists within, that's of truth and love. So you can be an atheist and have a very strong spiritual practice if you believe in truth and love. It's something that's uncovered. It's something that's discovered again and again and again, and it's most certainly something that we awaken to. And so these three programs work together. Mind-body flow, chakra flow, mystic flow, moving us from the individual into the collective so that we can take responsibility, heal, transcend, and experience the magic. The way that we can use yoga as a practice that can allow us space for self-realization is to look at the yoga as a tool that provides spaciousness for inquiry. Self-realization is a process that allows us to experience who we truly are, not our fear, not our grief, not our guilt, not our shame, not all the shadow aspects of our humanity that block us from our light. Self-realization allows us access into our highest nature, which ultimately is truth and love. This is not something we seek, it's something we awaken to. And it's life, it's trauma, it's loss that block that knowing and that experience. Yoga allows us to get on the mat, to move and breathe, and to release the tension. Why this is important is because tension is addictive. Tension is often emotional. Emotions that aren't processed, like our rage, like our fear, like our unresolved grief. Those emotions, when we're not reconciling them through understanding, through compassion, stay repressed in our body. And that repressed emotion becomes the tension we feel. It becomes our stress. When experiences happen, especially when we're children, and we have this onslaught of energy, and we don't know what to do with it, and we repress it, our bodies lock around it, and it begins to feel safe. It becomes a survival mechanism. Our body knows how to hold it. It then anticipates when conflict is about to arise. Our bodies will have a reaction, and we go into this control mode. I can understand why people would be afraid to let go of the tension when the tension is the thing that's so familiar, because letting go of the tension can also often evoke vulnerability, which for a lot of people is incredibly threatening, very, very scary. When we practice yoga, the asana, the poses, when you're moving and breathing and you're expanding prana or life force or oxygen into the system, the tension releases. And when the tension releases, emotions come up to the surface. This can be incredibly uncomfortable for some people, very, very triggering, challenging, but it's also an essential part of the experience, because when the emotions come to the surface and we have a chance just to sit in our uncomfortableness and breathe into it and stay present to it, it allows space for insight, for clarity. And it's only through this awareness that any real healing can occur. So the yoga is, like I said, a tool that we use to release the tension, to allow the emotions to come up to the surface. Our next part is to be able to stay present to those emotions without making them good or bad or right or wrong, and then go into a process of inquiry. Our limited beliefs, what do these emotions feel like? Can we even identify the emotions? How in touch are we? What's our impulse? Do we want to run? Do we want to get food? Do we want to act out in some capacity so as to numb ourselves? And if that's the case in the yoga practice, where else does that show up in our life when we're in great conflict? Where is our impulse often to want to self-medicate so that we don't actually feel the bigger feelings as they arise? It's necessary to allow spaciousness for those feelings come up if we truly want to transcend them. It's not a matter of bypass, it's standing right in the presence of and breathing into that discomfort. And so yoga is an embodied experience, gets us out of our head and drops us into our heart. Because the more that we can understand our journey, the emotions we embody, the trauma that we've had, the limited beliefs that we carry and share, the more that we can heal this, reconcile this, it allows us space to let it go. Again, not through an avoidance, but through a true spiritual understanding, and then surrender. And surrender is really the key to all liberation, letting go of everything that we think we know, and instead allowing space for what it is that we feel. And so the yoga practice gives us room to experience that level of intimacy so that we can reconnect with both our body and our mind and witness ourselves in our humanity and open space for our spirit. I come from a belief system that tells me that the world is in great conflict. There's war and terrorism, oppression, rape, illiteracy, poverty. There is incomprehensible abuse happening to our brothers and sisters nationally, internationally. And I know for myself, I want that to end. I know for myself in my soul that I'm committed to creating and supporting peace. But the practice of yoga teaches us that everything is connected, that there is no separation. That if I want that to change, then the revolution begins within. Because everything that's happening out there is a manifestation of our collective thoughts. Nothing's happening out there that we're not participating in, even if it's subtle. We're not making the decisions, we're not our leaders, we're not the people in power yet. If in our own life we're acting as if there's a me and a you, an us and a them, then we're part of this bigger picture. And so I practice yoga, I commit to the deep internal work because I want to live a life of integrity and inclusivity, and yet because of my own upbringing and socialization and culture, there are limited beliefs that are still within me that every single day keep participating in this dysfunction. So I have to look at myself and ask, what are the stories that I'm telling myself are true? Where am I getting stuck in my own ego, making someone else wrong so that I can be right, making someone else bad so that I can be good, rather than recognizing that maybe perhaps everything happens the way that it needs to in order for our individual soul to transform. Maybe perhaps that on a deep soul level, we co-create with the universe to bring us exactly what it is that we need that's going to allow us to truly learn love. In the yoga practice, we're taught to work towards something called samadhi, which is enlightenment, bliss. It's hard to define a word like that because it's ineffable. How could I possibly know what enlightenment is if it's something that I've never experienced? My words would never ever even be able to capture it. So the closest that I can get to the idea of enlightenment would be love. So I imagine that we're in these bodies to learn what love is, to truly learn what love is. In order to do that, part of the human experience is you also have to learn what love is not. To become enlightened, to move towards the light, you also have to understand the shadow. And often we resist the shadow. We give it titles as bad or wrong, naughty, evil, rather than recognizing that perhaps it's through loss that we can truly behold acceptance, that it's through heartbreak that we can truly understand forgiveness, and that in our human experience, we're not supposed to deny the shadow. Instead, we're supposed to be in relationship with it, hold both as sacred, both as holy, let both inform the other. So if you believe this, if I believe this, then maybe perhaps all of the events in our life, no matter how incomprehensible, catastrophic, maybe there's a spiritual opportunity that exists that'll ultimately empower, not in spite of the experience, but because of it. And if we can live our lives looking at our experiences as opportunities for spiritual healing, reconciliation, and transcendence, maybe perhaps we can recognize that perhaps the people who have crossed our path, who have dropped us to our knees, the events that have just ripped our hearts wide open, that maybe even within that, there's space for, dare I say, a blessing. And that if we can shift not the event, but our perception to the event, maybe it would enhance our experience in a way that could have never happened prior, and will open us to not get so caught up in the story of this person did this to me, and as a result I'm insecure and I fear of abandonment and rejection. Maybe perhaps on a soul level, the limited belief of abandonment and rejection is the thing that's been keeping you from yourself and from spirit. And maybe perhaps what had to be called into your experience was the exact opportunity that was going to hold a mirror up to that limited belief so that you can heal it. It's not something that's meant to be, you walk around, but the only way to surrender to it is to be available to it. So maybe those beings are teachers or angels. And maybe perhaps your wound, their wound came together to do some really interesting, amazing work. So if that's the case, maybe we don't have to give our power away to those experiences, creating more distance and separation. Maybe instead we can realize the opportunity within that relationship, learn, grow, forgive, and then give it back to God. Maybe perhaps that level of integration in all of our relationships is the thing that heals ourselves. And if we can continue to move forward on a path where we can see through a new lens our own journey, forgive ourselves for our own limited beliefs, forgive others for theirs, understand how trauma often motivates the decisions that we make, maybe we can then begin to hold sacred all people's journeys, knowing that they're doing the best they can with what little they know, the best they can with the lack of tools to support them in their own growth, recognizing that maybe they're also motivated by their own trauma and that their healing is between them and spirit. Maybe if we can develop that level of empathy for our own journey, we can hold that same level of empathy for someone else. And I think perhaps that's how the world begins to heal, where we hold each other lovingly as we move towards the samadhi. Recognize we have karma to burn, lessons to learn, trauma to work through, and a level of spiritual development that is very intimate and personal. If we stay on our side of the street and do our work and commit to it, then maybe it'll influence the way we raise our children, the way that we show up in community, the way that when we get triggered, when someone upsets us, hurts us, we're able, instead of being reactive and allowing our body and our anger, our rage, all those shadows to motivate our choices, maybe for just a split second, we can stay in our body, stay in our breath, stay in our heart, feel our feelings, but not allow those deeper feelings to motivate our choice. Maybe we can remember to love. And perhaps that love will be the thing that heals this planet. So for me, the Yoga of Awakening is about awakening to who I truly am and who we truly are to each other, and to commit to this process of being and hold the experience of life as something holy and intimate, and that each and every one of us has a responsibility to be bigger than who we think we are, and to trust that higher self and allow that higher self to motivate our choices. The process of self-realization leads us to understand who we truly are, that we're not the stories that we tell ourselves are true, we're not our wounds, we're not our shadow. We are our joy, we are our light, we are our love, and we're the relationship that we have with each other and with spirit. These practices are meant to be an opportunity to effectively release the tension so that we can show up in the world in a way that's more in alignment with our highest, most true self, so that we can activate that level of love in all that we do, say, and create. And placing your palms into Namaste, Invoke into your heart the God of your own unique understanding, be it your higher power, the creative consciousness, Mother Earth, or the Holy Mother herself. But to this grace ask, may we, each and every one of us, commit to releasing the tension, physically and emotionally, so that we can have a greater access to our truest nature. May we let go of the rage and the fear and the prejudice and the superstition and all that bind us in our ego, and remember who we truly are. May we open our hearts and reveal the love and the truth and the grace that is our highest essence. And may that innocence be the aspect of being that touches the hearts and souls of all beings everywhere. May we share this light. Be true to our humanity and move into a deeper relationship with all of our brothers and sisters everywhere. We ask, may we let go of the limited belief that keeps us separate from each other and from this planet, and commit ourselves each and every day to live more sustainably, more mindfully, more harmoniously in relationship to all souls. May we let go of the limited beliefs that perpetuate this disconnection and step more fully into our power. May we have the strength to step into that sacred world behind our eyes and open ourselves to our inner guidance and allow that knowing to move us forward on this path. May this path help us to transcend, connect, commit, heal, and love bigger than we ever imagined possible. We ask, may there be peace, and may we commit to that peace in some capacity for the happiness, for the health, and for the goodwill of all. Namaste.